Hello everyone, this is your friend Shinobi Nexus 2.0 and we are back in new fanfic. What if Naruto became a vampire on the night he died? Part 3. The elder village leader casually puffed on his tobacco pipe while focusing his attention on two individuals that were currently in his office, before letting out a long stream of smoke from his nostrils. The two individuals in question were doing all the good to hold in their laughter, and failing to do so at that. All the while, the other two females in the room looked on in amusement. This entire pile is the result of the latest string of pranks carried out by the two of you, from just this week alone. Hiruzen gestured towards a small pile of scrolls on the corner of his desk. Caramel-covered onions, questionable ingredients added to the local bakery mixtures, dousing poor Kiba with hormonal spray while cleaning the Inuzuka kennels, which resulted in the poor boy being nearly mounted by the male canines. At this, the two busted out laughing at the memory of the unfortunate Alpha being forced to the ground when one of the large dogs had jumped on him. Off to the side, Cruel could be seen placing a delicate hand over her mouth to hide her own laughter while the vixen woman to her side held a bemused grin on her face, having already had an encounter with the self-proclaimed Alpha weeks prior. Both of you then proceeded to flood the Yamanaka flower shop with a concoction of aromas that put Inochi and his wife to sleep for the remainder of the day, and anyone else who entered the shop after that. The elder village leader continued with a half-hearted scowl, as the man couldn't very well stay upset at the two pranksters. Lacing various members of ANBU's gear with itching and sneezing powder, with the exception of Neko. Defacing the Hokage monument with timed paint bombs. The Hokage took a deep breath, preparing himself. But your worst offense, by far. He began, narrowing his eyes at the two. Was swapping my personal reading material for that thing. I swear to Kami, I will never be able to look at Kakashi and Guy the same way ever again. You're telling me? Anko shuddered slightly. Who the hell would write that crap featuring those two? I mean, I get that boy love is a genre popular with preteen girls, but Kakashi and Guy. Seriously. Author was someone by the name of Dorothy. Naruto shrugged. And it was either Kakashi and Guy or Jiraiya and Orochimaru, pick your poison. Hearing this, both Anko and Hiruzen felt their stomachs lurch. Let's move on, shall we? Hiruzen coughed, trying to get the taste of bile out of his mouth as he turned his attention towards the sole pink-haired vampiress. That time, huh? She inquired with a sadistic grin. That it is. The elder man nodded. Not only will we be announcing your union with Naruto-kun, we'll also be making the announcement of his heritage. That is going to send the flesh sacks into a frenzy. Anko chuckled as she imagined the protests various members of the council would raise. As such, while I know you would like to accompany Naruto-kun, I ask that you sit this meeting out, Anko-chan. Hiruzen sighed, earning a groan from the snake mistress. One headache at a time, if you will. Yeah, Anko brushed off the comment. Civilian shitbags are already going to toss a fit about Whiskers being named Cruel-chan's fiancé. Bet those bastards will really lose their shit when they learn that the snake whore is involved as well. Naruto scowled at this before turning to face his mate, cupping her cheeks in his hands while earning a small blush from the snake mistress. You know that none of us think of you like that, Anko-chan. He stated firmly. So don't pay any mind to what those rancid blood sacks think about you. These are the same dumb asses that couldn't tell the difference between the prisoner and the warden. No offensive Yoko-chan. He quickly followed up on, looking towards the kitsune woman, scratching the back of his head sheepishly. None taken, Naruto-kun. The vixen smiled, knowing that her former host meant no harm in his statement. Fear not, Anko-chan. Cruel spoke up with a grin. When the time comes to reveal your relationship with our mate, you may hold your head up high as a proud coven sister of the Tep's name. This earned a fanged grin from the snake mistress. While she had intended to poke fun at the council's inevitable reaction, it was a relief to see her lover and fellow coven sister support her and help ease her insecurities. We'll meet up later. Naruto smiled, giving the perplet a kiss on the corner of her lips. Perhaps even go out hunting tonight, still a few of the untouchables we haven't tracked down yet. A shiver went down the snake mistress's spine upon hearing the promise of going out on another hunt. Allowing a bloodthirsty grin to spread across her lips, exposing her fangs, as she brought the whiskered vampire into a tight hug, burying the poor teen's face in her. "Oh Naruto-kun," she whispered seductively into his ear. "You know the exact thing to say to excite a girl. Show me a good time and I'll give you a reward tonight, Naruto-kun." Emphasizing her point by licking along his earlobe before she dissipated into a cloud of mist and drifted out the window. Earning a small giggle from the elder vampiress and the kitsune woman, all while Naruto was blushing up a storm. "At any rate," Hiruzen coughed, snapping the blonde vampire out of his embarrassment. "Let us proceed, I am sure you all other stuff you would rather do today." With a nod, Naruto followed behind the old man, accompanied by his sire and lover, and the vixen. Council chambers. Mumbling echoed throughout the large room as various members that made up the civilian side of the council had made their displeasure known to one another about a meeting being called, some of which even had the audacity to claim that the Hokage should have gotten their permission first before calling such a meeting, much to the annoyance of the other council members. After a few more minutes, the large double doors opened, revealing the village leader and a young-looking pink-haired woman, that many within the room had identified as the enigmatic cruel Teps that resided within the village walls in a rather large and private estate on the outskirts of the village. Her presence piqued the interest of all in the room, as did the presence of the other unknown woman that seemed to accompany the pinkett that seemed familiar to many of them. However, any interest they had quickly soured when they noticed the fourth individual entering the room, standing too close to the young woman for many of the civilian and elders' liking. "Hiruzen, what is the purpose of this meeting and why is that boy here?" inquired a portly-looking man, earning a glare from the village leader. "You would do well to remember not to converse with me in such a casual manner, councilman," Hiruzen growled, leaking out a small amount of killer intent, forcing the man to shrink in his seat. "You forget that this is a dictatorship, and I am the dictator. If I decide to call a meeting at 3 in the Kami-forsaken morning to discuss how the grass grows, you will attend in your sleepwear and a smile on your face. Am I clear?" The elder village leader emphasized his point by leaking out a considerable amount of killer intent, mostly focused towards the civilian council, earning a shaky nod in understanding from each of them. Satisfied that he had made his point quite clear, Hiruzen took his position at the head of the table. "Now, to answer your question as to the purpose of this meeting," he began as he produced a scroll from his robes and placed it on the table, earning curious looks from a majority of those present. "Since young Naruto Uzumaki has graduated from the academy and has been officially registered as a genin of Konoha, under Jonin Kurenai Yuhi, I have deemed it proper to release his heritage to the public." This caught the attention of everyone in the room with varying reactions. The majority of the civilian side scowled at the announcement, with the exception of a blonde-haired woman with emerald-green eyes whom had only gave a knowing smirk in response. The shinobi side was a mixture of stoic faces in the forms of Hiyashi Hyuga and Shibi Aburame and the feral excitement from Sum Inuzuka. Meanwhile Shikaku Nara just muttered, "Troublesome," from his position, face down on the table. Lastly, there were the three elders, that were Hiruzen former teammates being Homura Mitokado and Kaharu Udatane, and a rival in the form of Danzo Shimura and advisors to the Hokage. The former two had neutral expressions while the latter had a hint of disappointment in his eyes. "Forgive me Hokage-sama," the blonde-haired woman interrupted politely. "But could you please explain as to why young Uzumaki-san's heritage was hidden to begin with?" Hiruzen paused and looked around the room to see that a majority of civilian council members were curious as to why he would have gone through the lengths to hide the boy's heritage. Which only further raised the question as to who the boy's parents were that would require such an action. "I suppose it does warrant some explanation," the elder village leader conceded. The reason why Naruto-kun's heritage was made secret is due to the fact that both of his parents were not only well-respected and powerful members of our shinobi forces, but both his mother and father also made lots of enemies both within and outside the village. This piqued the civilian council's interest, many of which began to conspire that if the boy's parents had acquired such a reputation and hopefully wealth, they could no doubt use it to their own benefit. Enough to even overlook the boy's status, if only a little. Now, without further delay, the Sandaime began, getting everyone's attention as he picked up the scroll and opened it, revealing multiple papers. Here are copies of the birth certificate for one Naruto Uzumaki. The elder village leader proceeded to pass the stack off to the individual to his left, whom happened to be Sum Inuzuka, instructing each member to take one of the papers and pass it to the next person on their left. Hiruzen waited until all members of the council had a copy of the certificate before finally making the announcement. Now that everyone has a copy, I am proud to announce that young Uzumaki's parents are none other than Kushina Uzumaki and the Yondaime Hokage himself, Minato Namikaze. Hiruzen announced to the room. Noting their reaction upon the announcement, coupled with the written documentation that was in their hands. Some stared in disbelief, while others were in obvious denial and some, though small in number, expressed regret. Naruto Uzumaki, since you have not only graduated from the academy at the top of your class, earning the title of Rookie of the Year, as well as successfully working with your genin team to officially earn your Hitai 8. The aging village leader began with a proud smile as he turned to the young genin as he produced another larger scroll from his robes and presented it to the whiskered blonde. As such, you have met all of the requirements left by your father to claim your inheritance. Technically it was a lie, as Minato had wanted his son to at least earn the rank of Chunin before he could be given his inheritance, if only to ensure his son was strong enough to take care of himself in the event his old enemies reared their heads once more. Though in retrospect, rank was moot point when trying to measure the young vampire's strength. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Naruto accepted the scroll with a slight bow, a rare show of respect for the elder man's title reserved only for official settings, such as this. The sound of soft applause echoed throughout the room, as even those who were in denial of the boy's heritage still felt pressured by the other occupants to extend their hollow congratulations. Others members of the civilian council felt this was a grand opportunity for untold riches. I move to place Uzumaki-sama in the Clan Restoration Act. The same portly councilman from before motioned, earning a series of nods of agreement from his fellow civilian council members. The bloodline within Uzumaki-sama could boost any offspring he were to have. The increased chakra pools and density of the chakra of the Uzumaki could be a great help for all the clans his blood would be linked to. This will make the village shinobi proficient in their usage of chakra and jutsu, coupled with the fact that the Yotomi's blood flows through him as well. Another civilian added, earning himself a series of excited murmurs from the others. I am sure many of us have daughters close enough to his age that would be suitable to bring back the Uzumaki clan. As a matter of fact, isn't your daughter on his team, Mebuki-san? Respectfully, my daughter is her own person and will not be pressured to pursue anyone, regardless of their social status, against her will. Mebuki stated with a frown, not liking that she was put on the spot in front of the entire council, let alone trying to manipulate her or to use her daughter as a political pawn in the game for power and wealth. Ahem. A delicate feminine voice interrupted, turning the attention to the young vampiress. I'm afraid I will have to object. What do you mean that you object? The council member inquired, clearly insulted at the audacity of the enigmatic woman. It's not like you have claim to the boy. And that is where you are mistaken, councilman. Hiruzen stated with a smirk, earning a series of confused looks. Miss Tepps, the floor is yours. Thank you, Hokage Dono. Cruel gave a polite smile to the elder man as she moved to stand by her chosen mate. Many of those present noted the exchange between the young woman and the Hokage with a sense of curiosity. I suppose introductions are in order, she began. I am Cruel Tepps, sole heiress and surviving member of the Thankx family. The same Thankx family that used to own the entirety of the elemental nations centuries ago. Sheikah inquired lazily from his spot at the table, though anyone who was familiar with the elder Nara could hear a tinge of anticipation in his voice. The very same. The pink-haired vampiress giggled. I am glad to see my family's name hasn't been completely forgotten. Many of the records were lost during the clan wars that ensued afterwards. An unfortunate result of dividing the lands. Sheikah yawned, content that he received his answer. Unfortunate. Cruel sighed, before turning her attention back to the rest of the occupants in the room. As some of you may have heard from Hiruzen Dono, I moved into the village some 9 years ago, not only to settle down after my travel of the elemental nations, but in search of a proper candidate. Forgive my interruption, Thankx-san. Inoichi spoke. What do you mean by proper candidate? Why, for a husband of course. She replied bluntly, which made it clear to everyone in the room why she objected to the whiskered blonde from being placed in the CRA. And after carefully considering potential suitors, I chose Naruto-kun. To emphasize her point, she grasped hold of the Uzumaki's hand, pulling him slightly closer to her. Blushing lightly as he gave the back of her hand a gentle kiss. While I mean no disrespect to Uzumaki-sama or your choice in partners, Homura began, clearly unimpressed with the young woman's choice. Why not Sasuke-sama? Surely you have heard of how skilled he is and as well as how mighty the Uchiha clan once were. Ah yes. Cruel scoffed, not even wanting to understand why members of the council were so hung up on a child that only thought of what others could give him. I have seen your Uchiha, measured his worth and found him lacking. The spectacled elder seemed to take offense to her words, but wisely held his tongue. Silently, he eyed his fellow elder council members for assistance, only to find his female counterpart neutral in this debate while Danzo seemed to be preoccupied by something unspoken. I see. Homura reluctantly conceded, seeing as he had no support to move forward with. Still, perhaps another chance would present itself to salvage this for his own benefit. Now, Thankx turned her attention back to the rest of the council once more. Let me state that I will not deny Naruto-kun the right to bring the Uzumaki clan, if he so wishes. Then why did you object to Uzumaki-sama being placed in the Clan Restoration Act? The portly councilman inquired. Simple. Naruto spoke up, placing his hand on Cruel's shoulder in an affectionate gesture. We will not allow your daughters to be used as political pawns for you to use to gain wealth and power. I will bring back my clan, but it will be on our terms, not yours. Many of the civilian council members, with the exception of a few, bristled at this and would have spoken out if not for the subtle amount of killing intent coming from the elder village leader that forced them to hold their tongues. Meanwhile, those of the shinobi council were impressed with the young blonde's maturity. Well spoken, Naruto-kun. Cruel smiled approvingly. You said that you will bring back the Uzumaki clan on your own terms. Inoichi stated. Does this mean you already have potential candidates to assist in its rebirth? Naruto couldn't help but mentally smirk at the question. While it was phrased in a polite manner, the blonde vampire knew the real reason the elder mind walker was asking. The protective father was fishing for confirmation as to the identity of the boy his little princess was interested in, no doubt to have a talk with the boy about his daughter. We do have two that are being courted. Cruel answered before eyeing the disguised vixen behind her. Maybe a third, though she has been shy about it. Yoko tried to fight back the blush at the insinuation. However, only the Hokage and the prospect's parents will be notified should anything come to fruition. Cruel commented with a smirk, knowing this upset various council members in the room between the civilian and elder members. I bet one of them is that snake whore he is always hanging around with. One of the civilians whispered with contempt, earning himself a glare from not only Naruto and Cruel, but also Yoko and the Hokage himself. I would advise you to keep such thoughts to yourself, councilman. Hiruzen growled, leaking another dose of killing intent towards the guilty party. lest you find yourself expelled from your position. A moment of tense silence followed for a handful of seconds before the elder village leader let up his killing intent, turning back to the matter at hand. Now, as Hokage of Konohagakure, I now place Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze under the Clan Restoration Act, and stress that it will be under his own terms. Anyone caught trying to manipulate or intimidate prospects will be met with a swift and severe repercussion. Congratulations, my boy. Hiruzen smiled at Naruto before turning back to the council. Now, before I adjourn this session, is there any business that must be discussed? I have a personal matter that I feel must be addressed. Danzo spoke up as he reached into his robe and produced a small stack of letters and placed them on the table. For the last 3 months, I have been receiving no less than 200 letters at my home, in my office and even in my private quarters. The latest one reads as such. Dear self-important warmonger, I wanted to send you this friendly little letter to inform you of your imminent demise. If you're curious about the frequency of which I've been sending these letters, it is merely to instill as much fear as I can. As if basting a turkey. Which I will then proceed with. That's right, I'm going to the fear turkey. Sincerely. The Crimson Silence echoed throughout the room, as no one knew how to respond to what was written on the letter. Though as the silence lingered, the sound of restrained sniggering could be heard coming from the form of Sume Inuzuka, whom could be seen desperately trying and failing to keep her laughter in. I see. Hiruzen blinked in bewilderment, though cast a subtle glance towards the whiskered blonde. A rather amusing prank, Naruto-kun. Naruto-kun, the Sandame turned fully to the genin. Both you and Miss Teps are excused, enjoy the rest of the day. I'll be sure to have my Anbu notify the village of your rightful status. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Naruto bowed one last time, alongside Cruel and Yoko before the trio exited the room, leaving the council to figure out who the perpetrator of the letters was. After ensuring that they were well away from any prying ears, Cruel couldn't help but smirk at her blonde-haired mate. Naruto-kun, don't you think that prank was a little too immature and childish? She lightly chastised. While she found the prank against the elder war hawk amusing, she still felt it was a little too lowbrow. Perhaps. Naruto shrugged with a grin of his own. But this prank served 2 purposes. First was to annoy and irritate, making him more likely to expose himself, which he almost did in the council. Secondly, and more importantly, I've been using the letters to poke at his defenses as well as spy on his movements. You have Fuinjutsu seals on the letters? Yoko inquired, earning another smirk from the Uzumaki. Yup. The whiskered vampire acknowledged. Listening seals, locating seals and mapping seals. Since he keeps a few letters on him at all times for evidence, I almost have a complete mapping of his underground base. Just gotta determine how many root operatives he still has in play. I must say, I am impressed, Naruto-kun. Cruel admitted. When do you plan to report this to the old man? Hopefully in a few weeks. Naruto frowned. Danzo is about to meet with someone from outside the village, someone Anko-chan knows, Orochimaru. Silence hung between the 3 for a handful of seconds, as they knew that the bandaged elder was no doubt planning something with the traitorous snake. No doubt a bid to remove the old man and implant himself as Hokage of the village. And one didn't need to live as long a Cruel to see what kind of dark path that man would lead the village down. Anko-chan is not going to like this. Cruel commented. Agreed. Naruto sighed. The logical course would be not to tell her. Yoko offered, though it was half-heartedly. Maybe, but it would be best to be honest with her to prepare her. The whiskered blonde replied. I'll take care of it. As the trio fell into another silence, they made their way out of the Hokage's tower and into the busy streets of the village, ignoring the various looks the villagers would send their way. It seems the Anbu were already fast at work notifying the public of his heritage, now that it had been revealed. Yes, things were going to get very interesting for the young vampire in the coming days. Hyuga Estate, Clan Library. Hinata let out a bored yawn as she rolled up another scroll and placed it on top of the growing pile of scrolls of various sizes tucked away in her clan's private library. Ever since she saw the aura that surrounded that cruel woman, the Hyuga heiress was relentless in her pursuit of unraveling the meaning behind that black aura. It wasn't natural. There has to be something here. She groaned out loud as she began searching the rows of cases once more. However, as she combed through her family's massive library, she paused. Perhaps she was looking in the wrong category for her answer, since she was focusing on chakra natures which mostly leaned towards the elemental manipulation. Perhaps what she should be focusing on is chakra signatures. With a new focus, Hinata turned on her heel and proceeded towards the censor section of the library, leaving behind the cluttered pile of scrolls. Let's see, she mused as the pale-eyed Kunoichi browsed through the bookshelf, feeling a sense of frustration build up as nothing immediately popped out in which she was looking for. Just as she was about to give up, the sound of a single scroll hitting the ground caught her attention. Turning to the offending object, Hinata frowned as she didn't recognize this particular scroll ever being in her family's library. It was too gaudy with its small size, purple coloring and gold trim. Though what stood out the most was the fact that the kanji seemed to glow in the light. Giving it a once-over with her Byakugan, to ensure there were no nasty surprises, she grasped the scroll and slowly opened it. Reading over the seemingly glowing text, her eyes widening in disbelief. Whereas it wasn't so much as an informative text, but rather an invitation to the Tep's estate next week, in the morning hours. This could be a trap. Hinata frowned as she thought to herself. But it's my only chance to find out what happened to Naruto-kun and what her connection with him is, as well as that red-headed woman. Alright Tepps-san, I accept. She spoke out loud. As if taking her spoken acceptance of the invitation as its cue, the gaudy scroll flew from the Hyuga's hand and disappeared into a puff of smoke, leaving behind a bewildered but determined Hinata. She would get her answers. Chapter 8. A loud clatter echoed through the night air of Konoha, stirring some of the sleeping residents. I gotta get out of here, the portly man thought as he raced through the back moonlit alleyways of Konoha, knocking over trash cans and any other obstacle he came across in his panicked flight before tripping over his own feet and landing face first onto the ground below. Echoes of her melodious laughter bouncing off the walls, making it feel as if she was all around him. 1, 2, I'm coming for you, she sang in a haunting tune. Hearing this, the unknown man let out a terrified yelp and clumsily scrambled to his feet and took off once more, ignoring his lungs' pleas and his legs' protest to stop and rest as he attempted to get away from his pursuer. Ah, don't you want to play with me? The voice followed the man. Leave me alone, he shouted out into the darkness, and he stumbled over another pile of trash, causing a loud cluttering sound to echo through the alleyway, causing a stray cat to yell out in alarm as it scurried away, hissing. Someone, he cried out as he continued to crash through the alleyway. Help me, she's going to kill me. Quiet out there, an irritated resident shouted from their window, dismissing the unfortunate man's plight as he cried out for help. Cammy, I gotta get out of here, the man thought hysterically, pushing himself to run further in any which direction in hopes of finding sanctuary from his stalker. A shadow peeled itself from the wall ahead of him. Not cast by anything. Not natural. Waiting. He skidded to a halt so abruptly his legs nearly gave out again. His breath came in ragged gasps, each inhale burning his throat, each exhale trembling. His wide eyes strained against the darkness, and then she stepped forward. Moonlight found her. Blonde hair, pale as spun silk, shimmered faintly as it framed a face too still, too perfect. Her lips curved into a soft smile that didn't reach her sea-foam green eyes. Those eyes, they gleamed. You're not very good at this game, she said lightly, tilting her head as if studying something mildly disappointing. The man staggered backward. Stay away from me. Behind him, something shifted. That same soft, lilting laughter closer this time. His blood turned to ice. Slowly, almost mechanically, he turned his head. She stood there too. Another her. Same pale hair. Same smile. Same hungry eyes. And no, his voice broke as he spun back toward the first, only to find her gone. A hand touched his shoulder. Cold. Not the coolness of night air, but something deeper, something dead. He screamed and twisted around, but she was already there, inches from his face. He could see the faint reflection of himself in her eyes, small, terrified, prey. You ran so far, she whispered, almost gently. But you never left me. Her fingers slid from his shoulder to his chest, pressing lightly over his racing heart. He froze under her touch, as if his body no longer belonged to him. Such a loud thing, she murmured, listening. It's been calling me all night. Please, he choked. I won't tell anyone, I swear, Her smile widened, and for a brief, terrible moment, the illusion slipped. Fangs. Sharp. Gleaming. Inhuman. 3, 4, she sang softly, her voice threading through his thoughts like silk tightening into a noose. Better lock your door. I'll give you anything, money, just. She leaned closer and whispered, her breath tickling the back of his neck. You already have. He didn't even feel the moment her teeth pierced his skin. The unfortunate man attempted to cry out in a futile attempt for aid, but only silence came from his throat. Moments later, she stepped back, dabbing a trace of crimson from the corner of her lips with idle elegance. At her feet, the man crumpled soundlessly, unmoving. Reaching down, the young vampiress grabbed hold of the mont's head and effortlessly twisted it off the body. From a nearby rooftop, a stray cat peeked over the edge, eyes glowing in the dark. She glanced up at it and for a heartbeat, the night seemed to hold its breath again. Then she smiled, vanishing into the night in a cloud of mist, leaving nothing behind but a silent headless corpse, the faint echo of a lullaby drifting through the empty streets of Konoha. The next morning, Hiruzen could only let out a tired sigh as his Anbu reported of a headless corpse found in one of the back alleys in the market district. Despite not having a head, they were able to identify the victim as one of the civilian council members that had been present during the announcement of Naruto Uzumaki's heritage, though it had been long suspected that the overweight councilman had some rather questionable interest in underage children, though with no hard evidence, it was hard to corner the man. Publicly he ordered an investigation, though knew they would find nothing in the end, and the man's murder would be a silent warning to others who thought themselves untouchable. Still, I wish they would have picked a better time to hunt this particular target. The elder village leader mused. There had already been some murmuring that the whiskered blonde was behind the man's murder, due to his unwanted comments about Anko Mitarashi the day prior. Which lead to his current predicament. As a means to placate the allegations, he had dispatched Neko to summon both Naruto and Anko to his office to question them about their whereabouts last night. A knock at the door broke the elder man from his thoughts. Enter. As expected, Neko arrived, leading both Naruto and Anko into the office before the Anbu woman silently left, closing the door behind her to leave the Hokage to talk with the two in private. You called for us, GG. Naruto inquired. There was a murder last night. He stated, not dancing around the subject. A councilman, the very one yesterday that made disparaging remarks about Anko-san, if you recall. The whiskered vampire scowled, while the snake mistress gave out a huff. And I suppose you would like to clarify if Anko-chan and I went out hunting last night. It was a statement rather than a question. Regardless, Hiruzen nodded in confirmation. To be honest, old man, while we were out last night, we didn't partake in any hunting. Anko explained. We made a stop to get some ramen and dango and then we called it a night early and headed back to Cruel-chan's estate. That had not been what the Sandame had wanted to hear. If anything, it was more troubling. If these two were behind the murder last night, he could at least pivot any potential findings and sweep them under the rug, so to speak. However, their lack of involvement indicated that someone else, unknown, was the culprit. He had long dismissed the elder vampiress, Cruel, as a potential suspect. The murder didn't match her hunting style. The pink-haired vampire didn't toy with her prey like this one had. She was quick, efficient and left no evidence behind of her hunt. Whoever it was last night, played with their victim for nearly an hour from what the forensics had discovered from the body due to the condition of the muscles in the legs and the damage to the mont's lungs from prolonged running and overexertion. Hey, didn't Ino-chan say she was going to go out hunting last night? Anko looked to her blonde mate. Oh yeah, she did. Naruto commented. She was disappointed we couldn't take her with us the other night due to her father becoming paranoid about some boy stealing his princesses. Ino, as in Ino Yamanaka. Hiruzen slowly turned towards the two vampires. You turned Inoichi's daughter. Yeah, the whiskered blonde chuckled sheepishly, scratching the back of his head. Mumbling something that wasn't quite coherent. When? A few months before graduation. Naruto answered. The same night we learned that Mizuki Tem was working for Orochimaru. Hiruzen couldn't help but to rub his temples, hoping to stave off a potential headache from building. He could only imagine how the elder Yamanaka was going to react that not only was his little girl in a relationship with a boy but the inevitable revelation of her new status as well. So, she was behind the hunt last night. The elder man wanted to confirm, looking to the whiskered blonde. Looks like it. Anko piped in. She loves to toy with her prey and play mind games. From his desk, the elder man could only groan in response. From the sound of it, young Ino had a more sadistic streak than Anko, and that was saying something. As the snake mistress wanted widely known for her love of blood and inflicting pain on others, and that was before she was turned. And when do you plan to inform Inoichi of this? Hiruzen inquired, staring at the whiskered blonde. Eventually, came the veiled response, prompting the elder man to glare at him. Hey, it may be harder to kill me but I still feel pain, you know. Sighing, Hiruzen couldn't help but to feel a sense of empathy towards the blonde vampire as Inoichi was well known for his protectiveness of his little girl. And while the elder Yamanaka may not be able to kill the younger blonde vampire, he could make the boy hurt in ways one never imagined. Alright, you two are dismissed. The elder man sighed, waving off the two. Try not to cause me any more headaches and please inform young Ino to be more cautious if she hunts alone again in the future. Will do, GG. The blonde replied before Anko and himself departed the office, leaving the aging village leader to his thoughts. I'm getting too old for this. He sighed, relaxing back into his chair, gazing out over the village through the window. Sometime later, when Naruto and Anko arrived at the team's meeting spot, the two of them could feel an immediate shift in the atmosphere, feeling the eyes of both Sakura and Kurenai upon them, more so the whiskered blonde rather than the snake mistress. Sue. The pinkett started, looking to her teammate for answers. Sue. Naruto mimicked, looking between the two females that had yet to take their eyes off him. When were you going to tell us, she pressed. That not only are you the son of two of Konoha's biggest legends, but that you are also in a relationship with Cruel Teps, Kurenai interrupted, flickering her ruby eyes from Naruto to Anko. Care to explain? The Genjutsu mistress narrowed her eyes dangerously. One thing she absolutely despised were perverts that liked to prey upon women and take advantage of them. Of course she knew without a doubt that her sister figure, Anko, could very well take care of herself and handle her own affairs. It didn't mean she wouldn't rake Naruto across the coals if the whiskered teenager was playing her best friend. I know that look, Nai-chan. Anko lightly chastised her friend as she wrapped her arms around her blonde lover, just lightly hanging over his shoulder. You think Whiskers here has been playing me, don't you? Not entirely. Kurenai measured her reply, feeling a bit embarrassed at being bluntly called out like that. However, I will not deny that I am apprehensive of this development. However, her eyes flickered between the two. Judging by your lack of reaction, I can assume you were already aware of his relationship with this Teps lady. Well, Cruel Chan nabbed Whiskers before I could. The snake mistress shrugged in an uncaring fashion. But it all worked out. But, I thought. Sakura looked between the two in confusion. She had been positive that the whiskered blonde was only with the purple-haired snake mistress, bring up a pang of loss as it reminded her that he stopped chasing after her. Now learning that he was with another woman as well was baffling to the Pinkett. What? Anko piped in, looking to the younger Kunoichi with a predatory grin. You though we were exclusive. On the other side of the table, Kurenai could only let out an exasperated sigh as she looked at her sister-like figure. She honestly couldn't wrap her head around just how casual Anko was in regards to being in such a relationship. Not to mention with the way the two were acting, this was not a new development. In fact, she was willing to bet that the young genin had been involved with both women for a while now. Alright, Naruto spoke up, seeing that if this topic continued as it was, things could be misinterpreted and that could become dangerous. Before anyone jumps to conclusions, let's address the elephant in the room, as it were. Behind the Uzumaki, the snake mistress allowed a mischievous grin spread across her lips. Yes, I am in a relationship with both Cruel-chan and Anko-chan. He confirmed, opting to not reveal his relationship with Ino just yet, though he knew it would eventually come out in the near future. As it was, it looked like Kurenai was contemplating placing him under a multi-layered genjutsu of his worst nightmare, so in an act of self-preservation, it was best not to reveal the blonde mind-walker just yet. And as of yesterday, with the approval of both councils, Hokage-sama placed me in the Clan Restoration Act to help bring back the Uzumaki clan. Naruto explained, using the old mont's official title rather than his affectionate nickname for the old man. However, he continued as he saw the genjutsu mistress was about to speak up. We're not just accepting anyone. What we have is built on trust, connection and acceptance. In fact, Cruel-chan had already shot down various attempts of council members from the civilian side trying to use their own daughters as political pawns to gain more power, wealth and influence. Hearing this, Kurenai could only snort in disgust in regards to the parasites of the civilian council's pitiful attempts increase their own influence and to fatten their own wallets instead of looking out for the village's best interest as a whole. Though she did take solace in the fact that Uzumaki was not taking advantage of his position. Sakura meanwhile tensed at the mention of some of the council members' attempts, something that did not go unnoticed from the whiskered vampire. Relax Haruno-san, your mother was not among those I mentioned. He reassured his pink-haired teammate. In fact, she outright rejected the other members' suggestions when they tried to put her in the spotlight. This seemed to calm the young Kunoichi down, relieved that her mother had not partaken in the ploy as the others clearly had. Alright, enough of this. Anko spoke up, let's see if we can go get a C rank mission or something, all these D ranks are becoming boring. I don't think they're ready for. Yes they are. The snake mistress cut off her friend as she gestured towards the team of genin. These ain't the same kids from the academy. Each of them have grown as much as they can while being confined to the village. Now they need real-world experience. Kurenai frowned at this and looked between Anko and her team of genin. Shino looked impassive, but she could tell from the subtle movements under his jacket that the hive within him was brimming with excitement to venture out. Sakura looked eager, no doubt wanting to prove herself. Then there was Naruto himself, composed and centered, but even he showed interest in setting out into the world. Not to mention, unlike the other teams, Team Fangs has two Jonin-level badass Kunoichi if things get dicey. Anko pointed out with a grin. Alright, you win. The ruby-eyed Jonin conceded. Let's go see if there are any C-rank missions we can get. Anko let out a victorious whoop as she pumped her fist into the air, earning a chuckle of amusement from the blonde-haired vampire. Hokage Tower. For the second time that day, within the span of only a couple of hours, both Anko and Naruto found them standing before the Hokage once more. The irony of it was not lost to either of the three, while the remaining three were oblivious to the earlier meeting that had taken place. Team 8 requesting a C-rank mission, Hokage-sama. Kurenai spoke in a low, professional tone. Behind his desk, Hiruzen silently puffed on his tobacco pipe as he scrutinized the team before him. He didn't need to analyze Naruto nor Anko, considering their special circumstance that had practically made them untouchable. His concern, however, was for the rest of the team. While he was confident in Kurenai Yuhi's abilities, he still felt that she prioritized too much on her genjutsu and not enough on her physical capabilities, leaving them stagnant and unrefined. Fortunately, the presence of both Anko and Naruto helped cover that weakness. He then quietly turned his attention to Shino Aburame. Emotionally stable, mostly due to the hive that lived within his body requiring complete emotional control, otherwise the hive would become difficult to control. Aside from that, the young genin approached things with a pragmatic logic. Always analyzing the situation before entering the fray. Never one to take things at face value, and never one to give false up. The Aburame gave straight facts, whether they were good or bad. Lastly, there was Sakura Haruno. Without a doubt, she had become a late bloomer in her kunoichi career, though it had appeared his assigning her to a team away from Sasuke Uchiha had done her wonders, even if it wasn't his intent. Without the sole Uchiha present to distract her and under the strict guidance of both Kurenai and Anko, Haruno had begun to shape up into an actual kunoichi instead of a lovesick schoolgirl. Perhaps this team was ready for their first C rank outside the village. Very well, he finally spoke, placing his pipe down in the ashtray that sat upon his desk. Reaching over, he pressed the button for the intercom to his personal secretary. Please send the client in. Yes, sir, came the automatic response. Seconds ticked by before the double opened again, though the first thing that entered the room was the overwhelming stench of cheap alcohol that rolled off the elderly-looking man that had sauntered into the room, a gourd in hand half full of cheap sake. While the stench was horrible for most of the inhabitants of the room, it had been worse for Naruto and Anko due to their inhuman sense of smell, causing their eyes to water and throats to burn. So, this is what my hard-earned money gets me? The drunken man belligerently asked as he looked over the team, dismissing each of them without a word. Yes, this is Team 8, otherwise known as Team Fangs. The Hokage introduced, consisting of Sakura Haruno, Shino Aburame and Naruto Uzumaki, accompanied by joint Jonin instructors Kurenai Yuhi and Anko Mitarashi. His eyes floating over the various genin that were going to be assigned to protect him. Giving Sakura a dismissive pass, as the young girl looked like she would faint if so much as a mouse crossed her path. The next one, wearing a long coat that concealed most of his face, looked a bit more interesting. Though with how stoic the kid looked, the elder man couldn't decide if the kid was alive or dead. Then he turned his attention towards the blonde of the group and nearly felt his heart stop when he met eyes with the young genin. These were not the eyes of a teenager on the cusp of becoming a man. No, these were the eyes of a predator. One who took great pleasure in the hunt and relished the capture of their prey. Swallowing thickly, the elder man could feel the alcohol draining from his system instantly. Quickly, he moved on to the two older women, noticing how the one in the trench coat and purple hair was almost hanging off the young blonde, though refusing to meet their eyes. Well, at least the two women are easy on the eyes, he commented before turning his attention back to the group as a whole, avoiding looking towards the blonde. Anyways, I am Tazuna, the super bridge builder from Nami no Kuni, and I expect all of you to protect me with your lives. Silence hung throughout the office. It wasn't the uncertain, shifting kind that came from inexperience or nerves. It was sharp, deliberate, the kind of silence that pressed down on a man's shoulders and made him suddenly aware of every word he'd just said and how poorly they had landed. A faint tick of ash falling from Hiruzen's pipe into the tray sounded far louder than it should have. Sakura's eye twitched. Just a few weeks ago, she might have shrunk under that kind of dismissive glance, cheeks burning, mind spiraling into self-doubt. Now, however, something else simmered beneath her skin. Training under Kurenai had sharpened her perception. Training under Anko had burned hesitation out of her system. The insult didn't wound, it irritated her to no end. Her fingers curled slightly at her sides. Shino remained perfectly still, as if the man's words had passed through him like air. But a faint, almost imperceptible shift in the hum of Kikaichu beneath his coat suggested otherwise. Observation logged, judgment passed and then filed away. Naruto didn't react outwardly. Because unlike the others, Naruto didn't respond immediately. No flare of anger, no sharp retort, no grin. He simply watched. His blue eyes too sharp, too aware rested on Tazuna with the quiet patience of something that had already decided how dangerous its prey was and found it lacking. Anko's arm, draped lazily over Naruto's shoulders, tightened just a fraction. Her lips curled into a slow, dangerous smirk as her chocolate brown eyes slid toward Tazuna, amusement flickering like a blade catching light. Well now, she drawled, voice honeyed and edged with something poisonous. That's a funny way to talk to the people you're trusting to keep you breathing. Tazuna stiffened, grip tightening slightly around his sake gourd. Kurenai stepped forward before the tension could escalate further. Her posture was straight, composed, but her crimson eyes held a firmness that Sakura had come to recognize as immovable. Tazuna-san, she said calmly, though the word carried weight, you will refrain from insulting members of this team. Your safety depends on cohesion and trust. Undermining either is unwise. There was no threat in her tone, which somehow made it more of one. Tazuna clicked his tongue, looking away with a scowl. TCH. Shinobi getting sensitive these days. Not sensitive, Anko chimed in lightly, tilting her head as her smile widened just a bit too much. Just deciding whether you're worth the effort. That did it. Tazuna's earlier bravado faltered completely now. His shoulders hunched slightly, and for the first time since entering the room, he looked like what he truly was beneath the bluster, a tired old man carrying more weight than he let on. Hiruzen exhaled slowly, smoke curling from his lips as he let the moment stretch just long enough. Enough, he stated, his voice firm and full of authority. This is the team that will be assigned for your protection, Tazuna-san. Rewrite, the bridge builder replied, feeling quite embarrassed. When do we leave? A moment of silence passed before Kurenai spoke up. We'll leave tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock sharp. She instructed. I expect to see everyone at the main gate before then. And you better be sober, I will not have your inability put my team in danger. Am I clear? Yes, ma'am, Tazuna responded, feeling as if he was being lectured by his daughter. Good, the Genjutsu mistress replied before turning back to her team. You all have the rest of the day off. Be sure to rest up and pack for at least a month away from the village. Each of the genin acknowledged the instructions and slowly began to file out of the room, though Naruto and Anko stayed behind. When the door clicked shut, indicating they were alone, the two vampires turned towards the elder village leader. He's hiding something, Anko stated bluntly. I figured as much. Hiruzen sighed, putting his pipe down once more. I trust the two of you will be able to root out what it is he is hiding and determine the actual threat and if required, neutralize it. You can count on us, GG. Naruto replied, giving a mock salute. With that, the two departed the Hokage's office to plan for the night and inform the rest of their coven of their pending mission outside the village. Though the tough part was going to be explaining to Ino that both him and Anko were going to be out of the village, potentially for a month, something he was sure the vampiric mind walker was not going to be too keen to. Perhaps Anko and himself could cobble together an excuse to require a second team, though first they would need adequate evidence to support the need. He could only hope. The next morning, Konoha main gate. It had been a restless night for the unfortunate blonde vampire, as he had to inform the others of his imminent departure. It didn't help matters that Anko had left him to explain it to the rest of the coven by himself, while she sniggered to herself from across the room at his unfortunate predicament. Cruel had merely wished him good luck and a fruitful hunt, knowing the two would encounter some worthy prey. Yoko, the ever-devoted vixen, had requested she accompany them to ensure her master's safety. Something that the whiskered vampire had respectively declined, citing that officially she was supposed to be Cruel's servant, not his, and her presence in following him would lead to some unwanted questions and scrutiny from undesirable people. Lastly, was the blonde mind walker herself. As expected, Ino had practically demanded that they convince the old man to send her team along as well. It had taken some doing, but Naruto had managed to convince her to be patient and that if he and Anko could find enough evidence to require reinforcements, then they would insist on her team being the one that is sent. That seemed to placate the young blonde woman for the time being, if only a little bit. By the time he had arrived at the main gate, the others had already gathered, making him the last to arrive. Meanwhile, Anko stood just behind Kurenai, sticking her tongue out at her blonde mate in a playful manner. "Have a good night," the snake mistress inquired with a teasing grin. "You." The whiskered Uzumaki bit back with a grin of his own. "Oh, is that a threat or an invitation?" Anko grinned impishly, licking her lips. "Keep it up, and it won't be either for months," he threatened with a low growl. "You wouldn't," she stammered, though this only earned her a challenging look from the whiskered blonde, indicating that he would make good on that threat. Anko's reaction lingered just long enough to be satisfying. Her usual predatory confidence cracked not shattered, but strained as she narrowed her eyes at him, trying to decide if he was bluffing. Naruto didn't break eye contact, didn't smirk and didn't soften his stance. "He meant it. You're cruel," she muttered finally. Shoulders slumped in defeat, knowing her little prank from the previous night was biting her in the ass in the most inhumane way, at least to her. "Only when necessary," Naruto shot back with a grin. Kurenai pinched the bridge of her nose. "I would greatly appreciate it," she said, voice tight but controlled, "if the two of you could remember that we are about to leave on a mission." "Relax, Nai-chan," Anko waved lazily, recovering as she slung an arm over Naruto's shoulders, as if nothing had happened. Tension builds teamwork as well as leading to other, satisfying results. "It builds migraines," Kurenai corrected flatly, ignoring her friend's innuendo. Sakura, standing just off to the side, blinked slowly. She had trained under both women long enough to understand them individually. Together though, they were a problem. Still her lips twitched ever so slightly. The banter, as chaotic as it was, had an odd grounding effect. It reminded her that despite the stakes, despite the unknowns waiting beyond the gates, they weren't walking into this alone. Shino adjusted his collar slightly, his tone as even as ever. "Interpersonal dynamics aside," he said, "we should not delay our departure." "At least someone is taking this seriously," Kurenai commented. "I take everyone seriously," Shino stated matter-of-factually. Naruto huffed a quiet laugh, rolling his shoulders before gently shrugging Anko's arm off him. All right, he said. "Let's move before the old man drinks himself unconscious." As if summoned by the comment, Tazuna let out a gruff scoff from where he leaned near the gate, gourd already in hand. "Ha, I've been ready. You brats are the ones dragging your feet," the elder bridge builder stated in an annoyed tone. Naruto's eyes flicked toward him briefly, that same sharp glint returning, but this time, there was something lighter beneath it. "Sure you have," he muttered, not believing a word of the old man. Mostly due to the fact that he had spied the elder bridge builder sauntering to the gates mere minutes ago while he was bickering with Anko. Though to the man's credit, while the gourd was in hand, there was no alcohol rolling off him like the previous day. Meaning he was wise enough to follow Yuhi's advice. Azumo and Katetsu, Konoha's eternal gate guards, stepped aside as Kurenai moved forward to the logbook and signed her team +1 out of the village. The easy irritation from moments ago faded, replaced by the composed authority of a Jonin leading her team. "Final check," she said, turning slightly. "Supplies, weapons, chakra pills, camping gear. Set." Sakura answered immediately, voice firm. Having spent the better part of the previous night meticulously organizing her pack with the essentials. "Prepared," Shino followed. Naruto gave a small nod. "Yeah." Anko stretched her arms overhead lazily. "Always." Kurenai's gaze swept over them once more, lingering for just a heartbeat longer than necessary. Then she turned toward the open gates. All right, let's move, she instructed. Team, diamond formation around Tazuna. Shino, you take point while Naruto brings up the rear. Silently, the genin moved into their assigned position fluidly. The Aburame quickly moved just ahead of the bridge builder, while Sakura fell into step alongside him. Naruto paused for half a second at the threshold. Just long enough to glance back, not at the village itself, but somewhere beyond it. Toward a presence only he could truly feel before falling into step with the rest of the group, hanging back just enough to keep the back of the group protected. Anko fell into stride beside him, a grin already creeping back onto her lips. The massive gates of Konoha slowly closed shut behind them as the team proceeded down the well-worn path, sunlight spilling across the road beyond. The familiar walls, the safety of the village, the quiet predictability of routine missions, all of it lay behind them now. Their mission had begun. Their first step in the real shinobi world.